What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a very special episode of Renegade Marquee on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Tommy.
Greetings, Captain. I could not be more excited about this episode. For the consideration of our listeners, we are not only going to be talking about one of the best overall films of 2023, but in my eyes, one of the best films so far this young decade.
Oh, yes. We have the director and producer of Sam Now, Reid Harkness.
Hey, guys. That was an amazing intro. Thank you.
Glad to have you. And joining him is the editor, Jason Reid.
Hey guys, good to be here.
So before we get too deep into like the meat of this film, I just want to get to know you guys a little bit more as filmmakers and as just individuals. Reid, one of the things I loved about this documentary was in the first act where you showed home videos of you and Sam, making your own little movies together. So my question for you is, like, what were some of your inspirations growing up?
Wow, that's a good question. So, yeah, inspirations growing up, when I think way back, it was like claymation specials. And then it was like things like Saturday Night Live sketches, and then Almost Live, which was the Seattle rendition of Saturday Night Live. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's pretty amazing.
Oh,
that's where
good.
Bill Nye the Science Guy came from. Anyway, there was like, and then like my grandmother, who's featured in the film, Doris, she used to take us to small art house cinemas as kids, and I started seeing really surprising and amazing films at a young age. And then as a teenager, I just started going to my local video store and got really inspired to watch everything I could find that was considered independent cinema.
Nice. And Jason, what about you? What were some movies or even like TV shows that inspired your craft?
Yeah, well, I mean, so like Reid kind of got started young making films, but I kind of came into it more after college, or I ended up becoming a cinema studies major at the University of Washington in Seattle. And then I, kind of came of age right as the digital revolution was happening. And so kind of taught myself how to make movies and edit them digitally, which was kind of a new thing back 20 years ago. But in terms of things that are like really inspirational to me, I mean, I love like, what I really got into cinema studies was 60s French New Wave, and then the American independent cinema of the 70s. And then just growing up, I mean, I just like became a lover of cinema and independent film. And, back about 15 years ago now is when I kind of started really heavily into doing feature length documentaries. And it's been a busy stretch since then of a big succession of films.
Nice.
My question for both Jason and Reid, piggybacking off of that, was there a specific moment that you both feel individually spoke to you in realizing that pursuing the industry was your calling over the course of your life?
Can I swear?
Nah, the heck with it.
It's just one of those moments where you're like, holy crap, I can't believe these moments. But all right. Two things. When I was a teenager and I was renting videos pretty much daily from like my local video store clerk, basically pulled me aside and was like, remember me when you get famous, which is weird for a teenager because I'm just like, hey, I'm just renting videos. I'm not trying to be a filmmaker. What are you like putting that on me for? But like recently we had a screening and I tracked down those video store owners and invited them because I realized that was like a key identity moment where like I kind of had to face the question of really what I wanted to do. Another one was I was at a bookstore in Palo Alto in the 90s and Michael Moore was doing a book signing. I knew Michael Moore from TV Nation. I hadn't seen Roger and Me yet. And I get up in line and the guy in front of me is like bawling. He's like totally crying. And he's like, you changed my life. Roger and Me changed my life. And then I get up and I'm just like this gangly teenager. And I'm like, hi, can you sign my book? And I'm like, I'm going to get out of here as fast as possible. And then he's like, so what do you do? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a teenager, like, teenager stuff. And he's like, oh, really? What do you do? What are you interested in? And I'm like, well, I'm interested in filmmaking. And he's like, well, then say it. Say I'm a filmmaker. And I freaking said, I'm a filmmaker to Michael Moore. And that sort of cemented something in me. And then along the way within Sam Now, you can see the many iterations of where I have epiphanies of what being a filmmaker really is.
Wow, that's an incredible answer. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I had just this like moment where I wanted to become a filmmaker. I was never thinking that I was going to become a filmmaker as like a little kid. I guess I can go on a quick side tangent since this is like longer form, but like Reed and I grew up around the corner from each other in North Seattle, and we met each other probably when we were 5 years old. And so we've known each other for a very long time, which obviously like aided in the making of this film since it's such a close personal film. But Reed and I would grow up like playing together, like, building little armies with toys and running around doing hide and seek and everything like that. But I wasn't running around with them like making the films. And I just got really into film in high school and really into film in college when I realized that I could choose a major where I watched movies and thought about them and wrote about them in the same way you do that with literature. And I like to watch movies way more than reading. So, I had some really, really inspirational teachers who really, instilled in me, a formidable age that like what makes a movie a great film, and I got exposed to so many films that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And so, when I left college, I didn't have any tangible skills other than like knowing what made a film great. And that's when I bought, a camera and a Mac and editing software. And I just made my first film, over the course of 3 years, which was kind of a hybrid documentary, mockumentary about myself and my best friend growing up who had a rivalry at everything they did and decided to have an Olympic competition to decide who's the better man. And so, I kind of just fell into it making that. And then out of that, I got my first job editing. And then a few years later, I made my first 2 feature-length documentaries. And I think through both those projects, I saw the power of film and particularly the power of documentary and the stories you can tell and the impact that you can have telling these stories. And, that was 15 years ago. And now I've made a whole series of documentary features, a lot of which, like I am with Sam Now, I'm the producer and editor, one of 2 editors on. So I find that the editing of documentaries is like the best puzzle you can ever do. It's just like, so especially with a film with 25 years of footage such as Sam Now. But I'll just also say that like, I've reconnected with Reed after our childhood and our 20s, and he was making all these creative Super 8 films and doing hand processing and doing these screenings in Seattle and Portland with live music. And I was really, really inspired by the Sam films back in the early 2000s. And so, as I continued my career in documentary filmmaking and kept finishing like other films, like I felt like Sam Now was like the dream film, because it has all the cool formats, and Reed's such a talented filmmaker, and we had access to this incredible canon of films. And so in 2015, that's when we officially partnered up and then got the funding from ITBS and PBS in 2019. And then it was 3 more years of shooting and editing to finish the film. So it's been a long process.
Nice. Just going back to what you said about editing, this isn't so much a question, just an observation that I think out of all the film genres, documentary is probably the one where the editor is kind of more so than others, like the driving force of documentary filmmaking. Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, I just think it's like critical. Like you have nothing without like the edit of the movie, and especially like so many thousands or more decisions need to be made in the process. Of course, that's in collaboration with the director and other, chief stakeholders in the film. But like, the editing, it's like so many films don't ever get finished because the editing is so difficult and it's such an easy thing to get wrong, and it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy and process. I mean, we had a super interesting thing with Sam Now where Reed was shooting act 3 of the movie as we were editing basically act 1 and 2, and the edit was informing the shooting, and the shooting was informing the edit. And then we had the writing and the voiceover, which Reid would work on. Then Darren and I would integrate, and we'd take things out and put them in. And I mean, there's just so many different ways you can organize the scenes, and so many scenes and elements we had to work with Sam Now. It was definitely like the hardest editing puzzle ever. And we, Darren Lund, I got to give a shout out, my editing partner on this film and all the other films we've done over the last 15 years. I mean, we really needed two of us working full time, along with Reid working, on, having like a separate script that he was updating, and that was informing stuff for us to do. We were doing experimental things. So, I mean, it's definitely like, as opposed to a narrative film where you just have a screenplay and you have takes. But I mean, especially if the director wants to adhere to the screenplay, you're not really making that many decisions compared to a documentary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Was there a specific structure, as you were, to piggyback off of your answer there, Jason, was there a specific structure that you ultimately decided to go down as far as what eventually became the 87-minute feature?
Well, I mean, I think, Reid always had a fairly clear vision, or really the first half of the movie is kind of established by the chronology of the film in terms of like brothers making films, mom disappears, going out to find her. But the second half was much more amorphous and didn't really have as clear of a trajectory. Now, as it got shot and everything, that became clearer and clearer. But I mean, I think that we started off by organizing things sort of chronologically of everything that had been shot, and then organizing it more thematically of the visual content, like the Super 8 and the VHS. And really it was like assembling everything long form. Like I was the person who watched like all of the footage, so between Reid and I were the only people who really knew the full depth of the canon of footage. But I mean, we're talking about, hundreds, if not 1,000 hours by the end of it all. And so it's a lot to like keep track of. But yeah, I mean, I think if you were to go back and look at our first rough assembly, a lot of the basic structure is similar. But like I said, there's thousands and thousands of decisions that got us to the point of it being the film that it is today, that, it had elements of in the earlier iterations, but they were much more sort of bloated and not necessarily organized in the right fashion.
Absolutely. I'll ask you this, Jason. With your career centered around documentary style filmmaking so far, is there something that you had taken with you, something that may have spoken to you in the past and that you were able to bring to the table in your abilities on editing this project?
I kind of think Sam Now is a culmination of like really every project that we'd done to that point. It was definitely more ambitious in terms of scope and theme and content, and just like importance of what we were trying to do. Is also more personal than anything that we'd done before. I think on a straight technical level, the previous bigger film that Darren and I had edited, Dirtbag: The Legend of Fred Becky, which you can watch on Amazon for free with your Prime membership, that film had like 93 years of content because our subject lived to the age of 94, and we had journals going back to the 30s and 10,000 images and various kinds of film and video footage and audio recordings. And it was like this huge amalgamation of things, but like it was different than Sam Now, because Sam Now had way more sort of like verite moments, and it was a different kind of challenge that was telling someone's life story, which was challenging. But this was like, I don't know, there was just so much more involved and so much care and precision in the edit that we need, and just things we had to be aware of. And it was just a lot more complicated, and it took probably twice as long. And we're talking 3 years of full time between Darren and I editing, outside of, 4 years of kind of prep work in the background before that. So it's, it was a big lift.
Well, I would say all of that hard work really seemed to pay off. Now, getting a little bit more into the heart of the story, I hope I'm not alone in saying that one of my favorite things about it was the brother dynamic between Sam and Reid. Do you want to go a little more in depth with that?
Oh my God. Yeah, my brother, he's like 8 years younger than me. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah,
I have to fact check with
like
Jason.
I think it's 7.5. I think it's 7.5. But yeah,
Jason became like this amazing, like imagine you have your own like personal Wikipedia or something. Like Jason like immersed himself in like all the content, and there was points where it'd be like, you know, that shot where there's like a red flower in the background, and like Jared's kind of walking off, and he'd be like, oh yeah, I think that's on the Jared 5 timeline, so
yeah, it's like 3 hours and 42 minutes in. So, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so Sam and I, one of the complexities of the edit, I think, is to do with really upholding the vision of storytelling. And, that was on me. I had a conversation with Sam about being involved in the edit as we started to get into true editing. And he declined, but he sort of put this, he put me to the test. He said, I trust you to tell this story, but it's got to come from you. So what I heard from that was that like I really had to uphold this language that we had learned together through our whole lives. And when I say that, I'm talking about like, how did we learn to play together? How did we learn to communicate? When did we realize that we could share emotions safely? All of these things are building blocks in the story, but it's also informing like every edit decision, because authenticity became like so essential. Basically, I believe truth doesn't lie in the most accurate documentation, but in searching for what is true. For me, like as storyteller, I have to find the thing that is true to me and my relationship with Sam. So that became like a really big mantra. How do I do that? And there's certain things where it's like, hey, it would be a whole lot easier if we just explain this in a certain way where, the conversation about how about the Blue Panther finds his mom ends in, something like Sam saying, hey, I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. But like really what he said was just one word. And it was like, yeah, which is how teenage boys talk. And I had to hold on to a lot of those like values, just making sure that everything in the movie held up to what I know and what I know with my brother.
I like what you said about authenticity, which I've always found more valuable in film, whether it's narrative or documentary. For me, it's more important to be authentic than to be accurate, because it's about getting to the heart of the story, not just getting all the facts right.
Yeah, exactly. And there's moments of like where we jump around in time a little bit in the third act in order to tell the story effectively. And also, I think it's more authentic to understand the story in the order that we have it than it is if it were to like go in like exact proper chronology. But yeah, regarding my relationship with my brother, it's really interesting. It's like we're really tight. And at the same time, like the movie making like kind of pulled us together. It was like an original, like this is something that we bond over making movies together. And then as it got into like deeper layers of like family hurt and trauma, that started to become like a symbol of like, okay, this means abandonment problems and means like we have to talk about my mom again and all this kind of heavy weight. So I think we dealt with it pretty well at the end of the movie. But it's been a process. And like one of the things that was really valuable to production and continued filming with Sam was that we made a pact to hang out at least as much off camera as we were on camera or with a camera around, or even talking about the making of the movie. As you guys understand, there's a heck of a lot of talking about making movies before you actually shoot or do things, So
Absolutely.
we made that rule, and I think that was really helpful as a exit strategy. Like we we weren't left just like, how do we do this now? We still have a lot of connection, and he had a really great time on the release of the movie, coming out to Q&As, and we would just like hang out in New York and do fun stuff. So it was generally a good time, and it was like it's also amazing to see like how my family's kind of rallied around the movie, and kind of like, they'll like represent, and then also there's just different layers of like understanding that starts to happen.
I'm glad to hear that about your family, especially how this film ends. It ends on a actually positive note.
Now I'll piggyback by saying that genuinity, we were talking, Reid, before you came on, that light at the end of the tunnel, it's like it provides that feeling that whatever it is that somebody may be going through, that there is that hope and optimism at the end of the day, no matter what somebody may be going through. And you were talking earlier about that genuinity with the language of like, yeah, it just really adds that, it really elevates the power behind the story. And it's just incredible, the power that you've created on that front.
Thanks, Tommy.
Welcome.
Yeah. I feel like there's something about fiction here that is, I don't know, what the popular belief is, but my feeling is like within this story, something that's so beautiful and it's such a good document is that I'm able to capture our reality to an extent and our fiction to an extent. Like I have these layers of what is going on in our fictional worlds happening at the same time as layers of what's going on in our real, family worlds. And I think that those things work really amazing together, almost sort of revolve around each other. And, in One Light, the movie is about questioning escapism and ways in which we have defense mechanisms, avoidance for all characters, and then also ways in which we face things and lean into the really hard shit.
100%. And it's so fascinating because everybody deals with particular situations so differently, and that when one has the ability to look back and really see like how they can move forward, and in the sense of such a coping mechanism, whatever said case may be, and then but really take that chance to move forward and with whatever cycle that they may be going through. We don't want to confront it, but we won't, when one really can take a good hard look at themselves and not avoid something in the sense of being unable to move forward, but they can genuinely, and that's what I love about this documentary, is the genuinity behind that they can genuinely look at themselves and say, they're ready.
Yeah, that's something that doesn't necessarily come overnight, right? Like, and in the story, that was a big revelation, was like, hey, maybe Sam won't make these connections until many years later. And that's where it's like, okay, because it's my family, they're not going anywhere. And I can use what I would call patient filmmaking.
Absolutely. And that simple moment, for example, in the third act, when he's in his house, he's leaning on the counter and just looking around before walking out the door. You can really feel like the thought process. It's like the gears grinding of everything coming up to that point before he exits at that moment. You can really feel that, the power behind that.
Sam is he's somebody who, in the movie he says like, I feel like I'm emotionally crippled, like it's really hard for me to recognize my emotions all the time. And it's been really interesting getting to know that about him. I feel like even your siblings, like it's really hard to get to know a completely different style of processing. So the exercise of going in deep with my brother has been really, I would say, amazingly connecting. Like I feel like I really get that. I really get the thing that he's going through, and I get why too. I get most of the why.
That certainly comes across watching the movie, that it feels like you are learning a lot about not just Sam, but like everyone that's featured in this documentary. It feels like you get like a sense of like why they're feeling this way, and like how everyone kind of processed this whole deal, and they're like in their own way.
Oh man, yeah, we all have our different ways, and I think mine happens to be like, hey, the camera's kind of a defense mechanism. I used it like kind of as like protective shield. I use it also as a flashlight to like look into dark corners. But it's like, man, looking at these places, all these vulnerabilities in my family, it's like I couldn't just look at the abandonment trauma. Like I had to look at like kind of a lot of the places, because they're all connected, and really, my understanding after doing this is just that, these kinds of patterns are generational, and like really stay with us and stay in our families until they're truly addressed. So I've been personally doing a lot of work on just like recognizing like, okay, what am I feeling right now? And like, am I putting up defenses to it? And then also just, it's been amazing to have this really open line of communication with my brother, Sam, where it feels like we can talk about pretty much anything. I mean, now I refrain from going into mom questions, because I feel like I overextended that, but I'm also not, I wouldn't hold back if I could tell that there was something up. But I just gotta say, it's really amazing to have that in a sibling, where you can kind of go to any place you need.
And that deep connection. It reminds me, Reid, of my relationship with my sister. Growing up, I not only consider my sister Katie, she wasn't just my sister. There are only a handful of people that I could really consider to be one of my best friends. And as we grew up, our differences led us in different directions on that element. But just that gift and being able to, and thinking about that, the power of that connection in that sense, just to really allows one to take a step back and see them in that strong connectivity. It's really deep, and it's really deep to process in that respect.
It's a real gift, and I'm lucky that I have a pretty big extended family, lots of cousins and aunts and uncles, and kind of this very collective family experience. I know it's not the normal right now in Western culture, but I really see the value of that.
Absolutely.
I kind of saw my own family in the Harknesses, because at least on my mom's side, she is one of like 10 siblings, three sisters and like 7 brothers, both older and younger. So it was just kind of interesting, like noticing various similarities between my family and yours.
That's cool. I love that. And did you have like a matriarch figure?
That's kind of my mom. Like to some extent, she's kind of unofficially become the head of the family.
Yeah, I really believe in the power of that role, and kind of the wisdom that my grandma Doris passed on to all of us. I think that that's another benefit of this movie, was like I got to really lean into looking at the family dynamics and examining these different roles, and seeing how really my grandmother was leading the way on sort of family philosophy, and all of this wisdom. And, she's somebody that came from early childhood development specialist. But she worked with preschoolers like her whole life, and even went into houses for 20 years as a research project, doing like this coding exercise with family attachment, and like we just sit there and smile and just make notes on, if if a kid falls and gets hurt, what do the parents do? So yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways, like Sam now was kind of even just, talk about like generational stuff, like an extension of some of the work she was doing.
100%. And when you think of things being passed down, and I think of, talking about that generational head, I think about when it comes to certain aspects of my life on my mom's side. She came from a very large family. I have 39, 40. Forgive me for not knowing the exact number. So if any member of the Trump family is listening to this, I apologize. My brain is freezing up a bit, but I have about 40 first cousins on my mom's side of the family, and the David and Mary DeTremp were the ones who oversaw my mom's side of the family. And when I think of my mom in that sense, and and that certain things being passed down, overlooked, and particular sense of wisdom, and even though my grandparents are no longer on earth, I think to myself in various instances, what would they say to me today? But at the same time, just having that confidence and being able to move forward in that respect. Yeah, it's so much, going back to that connectivity and the power of speaking to the viewer, Reid. That's, just even by sitting here and talking with you, it's just, you're able to really look back upon yourself, and that's just the power that you have presented, that you've created with this documentary. So it's just, this really is a gift.
Thank you. I also think of this, the question that you said, which was like, what would my, grandmother say to me? I think that that's a similar concept to what I hold with my grandmother. And I think that these are ways in which we follow through on not just our family DNA, but almost like our family purpose, right? Like there's all these interesting attributes to that, and I really think it's very powerful. So thanks for sharing.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I should be saying thank you for creating this, because it's just without it, it's just, sometimes it wouldn't, for someone like myself, sometimes it wouldn't allow one to really take that positive look. But thank you. Bring the mood up for a moment. When it came to the soundtrack, I had to double check the website. You had a variety of pieces from the Sonics, Wailers, Smog, and Cat Bloom, among many others. Was there a specific moment in the documentary that reminded you of a particular piece of music, saying like, this has to be here, or what led to the placement of these particular tracks within the movie?
Oh my gosh, that was such a fun and excruciating process. We Adam Brown is our music supervisor, and he dealt with all the contracting, and then Jason, Adam, Darren, Lund, the other editor. They're huge music snobs. It was like we were editing in a record store, and then I had like this playlist that was like, I don't know, 500 songs or something of like, these are the kind of like inspiration music. These are the kinds of things that like I could see working. And so Jason and Darren would like plop things into the edit at certain points. Jason, you want to like get into?
Oh man, we just like I was saying about the edit, hundreds of decisions, and the music decisions were just like, sometimes we'd have 30 versions of a sequence with 30 different songs, especially like when, there's a song that kicks off the road trip, and for years we had Have Love Will Travel, the Sonic's most famous song, but the master recording rights on that were owned by a major label, as opposed to the other Sonic songs, so we got to deal with a more independent label. And so we eventually had to lose that song, and it just took forever to figure out what is that first music cue on the road trip. And we landed on Psycho by the Sonics, but there was probably 100 different things tried for that. And similarly, we had like wish list things like Velvet Underground songs, and things like that we wish that we could get, but we quickly realized that they were not going to be on the PBS budget. And we were lucky enough that everybody who licensed us music agreed to do it at the same level, which was affordable to our budget. So yeah, I mean, it was a big process though. And like we all have really strong music opinions, like me, Adam, Darren, and Reid. And so one of us would like fall in love with something, and then we'd present it to the other people, and like, nope, that doesn't work. And it's like, all right, you just gotta just keep moving on until you find the right cues for the right spots. And some of them were just, they became very obvious the moment that we, put them in the cut. No, and if they were gettable tracks.
If there's one thing I appreciate is a good soundtrack for any film, narrative, documentary, whatever.
Hey, this is cool. So on the 8-hour, 21-minute inspiration playlist that I made, the first two songs, Dressed in Black by Teen Generate and DOA by Dead Moon, we are in the movie. Hey, that's really cool, isn't it? Those are the first two songs I put on there.
That's cool. Yeah.
Love that.
And then going down, it's like, like the Sonics, like not very many songs later come in. So we did really push for music that was important to us. And the reason that the Sonics are important is because the Sonics are from the Pacific Northwest, mid 60s. Actually, early in the 60s, they really were like punk pioneers. They were poking their amplifiers with pins to get distortion before distortion existed. And I really believe that that movement, the Pacific Northwest sound in the 60s, is a way more potent and exciting sound than even the grunge era of the 90s. And one day when I was in my youth, and Sam was just a little guy, I was at a garage sale in our neighborhood in Seattle, same neighborhood as Jason. And I was going through a box of records, and I saw the Sonics Boom in there. And I knew that it was like valued at like $200. And I asked Sam for a quarter because it was priced at a quarter because I didn't have any money on me. And he's like, no, this is my quarter. And I was like, please, I'll pay you back. And he gave me the quarter. And when it came time to talk to the record company about using this, I told this story. I held up the LP, and I think that helped them warm up to working with us.
Nice.
Spectacular. I love moments like that. Special moments within the power of music that really hit close to home, and that special album, that special meaning. It's like when one of the most prized possessions within my mom's house is and I want to say this was before I want to say it was sometime before I was born. This the story behind the cassette of Andy Williams' Christmas Present, that special Christmas album. He was talking about, if I'm remembering this story correctly, Daddy was talking about Andy Williams. They went into a gas station. I can't remember where they were. And he purchased the cassette, picked it up, and they listened to it. And ever since then, that cassette has been, it's not the Christmas season unless you hear that Andy Williams sing Christmas Present at least once. And
it's got to be off the cassette. Like, is the cassette still working?
If only. I mean, obviously times have changed, but just being able to listen to that song and its special meaning to it. I mean, it's just incredible. And and the power behind moments like that. And of course, Mom's probably going to listen to this and say I got the story wrong, but those specific moments hold that special feeling. That special feeling once more.
I love that. And that was the Sonics, the Wailers, those Pacific Northwest bands from the 60s. Like, I made mixtapes of all that. I would find the records and I would record them onto tape, and then we listened to them in my car as we were driving to locations to film our early Sam movies, the fiction movies that you see in the beginning of the film.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Yeah, but and the power behind combining music with that specific scene with any movie. It's just so powerful, and I love it.
I agree with that.
There's also like, I feel like the movie is sort of a hybrid between this sense of like joy and adventurous, inventive filmmaking. And so brothers going on adventures and road trips and stuff. And then sober reality of like, now we have to face this. So there's also music choices that are very much from that place too.
What was it that, as the evolution process and making the movie, what was it always that inspiration to keep going, specifically with the third act, and what inspired you to keep going past solving the mystery into seeing Sam where he is today?
I felt very unresolved. I think that the movie, as it moves along, we have this sort of natural like adventure of like, we're going on a road trip, something's gonna happen, maybe something's gonna happen, and then something does happen, something really huge happens, and I guess we don't want to get into spoilers, but it's profound. And then we're like, okay, now what's gonna happen? And that's when it's like, oh, everything's kind of like falling back into like the normal from before, and it's like, what do I do about this? So at that moment I begin to realize that it's like I have a need to answer some of my burning questions. I have a need to like know more about this and why it's happening. And so the span of time that happens from that is to do a little bit with, I recognize that my brother's not really ready to face it. I recognize that Sam is not, he kind of just wants to like move on. And then other characters too, there's that quality too. Everyone just kind of was like, okay, great, let's move on. But I couldn't move on. It was something that was haunting me, and I felt compelled to stick with it. And that meant, some time, and meant, at certain points there was characters that didn't want to be filmed for periods of time, and then I'd come back and I'd be like, I want to continue this, and they'd say yes. Joyce was one of them. And then, it's both life and filmmaking, and wearing the hat of like, I'm a family member, wearing the hat of I'm a director trying to tell a story. And then you're in the edit room with like, your childhood friend, like trying to figure this all out. So it's a huge mix of things, it's a lot of humanity going into this particular kind of storytelling.
That goes back to the comment we made earlier about the difference between authenticity and accuracy. Like I felt that the sort of like the struggles to like keep going while I was watching the film, after you guys like go finally, I think it was like after the phone call, that's when I kind of felt like, oh, there's still more story to tell after this.
There was also like, when you do a project like this that has a lot of scale, a lot of big ideas, there's really a lot of themes in here that are really important to the movie. And as I would tell people about the project, they'd say things to me like, oh, it sounds like you're trying to boil the ocean, or like, that sounds impossible. Also they'd be interested, but it was like, I heard a lot of, this might not be doable. So I had to push through that as well. And these are places where, hey, let's look at this this timeline in the movie, 25 years of not just like watching Sam develop and my family develop, but it's like, here's me and my wisdom in time. I'm at a point, as a young person operating with what I have. And then as I get older and big decisions are made, I'm operating from those points like through the years, right? And this is how I think this is how growth works. This is how we evolve, how we progress. But I'm really proud of that aspect. I love this timeline of following through on, and this is something you get to experience as an audience member. You get to see what I'm going through as that develops in time. It's like really just the movie is just built on the questions that I have at various stages in my life about my family, which I think is really, really beautiful and really, it's been a giving process for me. I feel like it's the movie kind of that I always wanted. I always wanted this movie when I was a teenager. I wanted to see brothers interacting. I wanted to see how family works. I wanted to see how parents worked. I wanted to see like, just the idea of like how a filmmaker begins their journey and how they get somewhere, how they get to ideas, why they do things. So this is a movie that reveals like why I'm doing things in every beat.
One of the characters, or I guess one of your brothers, who I actually latched onto quite a bit, was Jared. How did he feel being involved in the narrative of this movie?
My brother Jared is like the sweetest guy. He's probably like, of all of us, just like the coolest. He gets the coolest medal. He's the coolest guy ever. He is he's a DJ in Seattle, and he's also he works as an assistant at his old high school, Nova, where you see him in the movie, basically assisting kids that are struggling in class and helping them stay motivated. And I'm especially proud because there's that scene in the movie where I'm like telling Jared to write this letter to his mom, and I'm like pushing him to do it. And he's just like, no, I'm not going to do it. But I was like, come on, Jared, just do it. He's like, okay, fine. But I'm proud to be his brother, but also Jared is just such a good-hearted human. He's probably seen the movie more than any of my family members. He'll show up to screenings and watch it like every night if it's in town. He loves watching it, and he has things to say about it. He's got a different perspective than I do, but it's been really beautiful having conversations with him. And in the filming of it, I think the sort of depressed teen thing, I think that I think he was a little like, oh man, like like, why are you filming me? But I think now, especially with like where Sam gets in the movie, and Sam is like, basically honoring his depression and saying like, hey, that was actually a pretty good strategy you had. Like maybe you were more equipped than me. Like I think he really values, these sort of places that the movie gets to. And also there's a lot that doesn't get said in real life where the movie provoked people to talk, and I think he appreciates it.
There's a line that Sam says where he's commenting on, how Jared was processing this all. He said like, what I thought was a weakness turned out to be a strength, and I think that's something that I really kind of honed in on, and I think that's just one of the important themes to take away from all this, is that you're not weak for showing your emotions.
Never. I agree. I think that one of the things that I take away from the movie is that, Jared being visibly depressed and unmotivated and all these things that I'm a parent of 4 kids, and, all these things we really worry about with our kids. I think it was just an important stage in his life. I also recognize, Sam had to get by in the way he could, and his way was to hide from his emotions, escape, hang out with friends that were kind of, on the honor roll and into sports and doing things that he saw as positive. And I see that as a useful tool too. It's really complicated, and I know that this is true for a lot of families, most families. So it's just been a total honor to be able to do this with my family, and then also like with Jason, who is, I've known him since I was 5. Our whole team, Adam and Darren and Heather, who I share the kids with, it was very much like a family operation. And I think that there's collective wisdom and just like looking at family and looking at how we operate and looking at like, hey, like, let's stay away from any like experts. Let's stay away from anything that is necessarily like a hot topic, and let's just look at what we see here.
What was it that inspired you to release this story to the general public?
That's a great question. I think that, we could certainly talk. I know Jason's got something to say about this, but I recognized that after working on this movie for such a long time, I recognized that my family is probably not going to do a great deal of change with the current generations. If I made the movie purely for them, also, it would still stay more or less in the closet of the family. But by releasing it, by sharing it, by having other people talk about it, there's touch points where more of us can identify and more of us can, recognize what I think of as sort of like lonelinesses. We all have these places where we feel really lonely, right? And as we share them, we can start to see that, oh, other people have these things too. And, along the road of releasing this movie, we've connected with so many people that have abandonment trauma from their moms, and way more things than that. There's like a lot of things that in this movie audiences like recognize. And I feel like that work is not just healing for my family, to know that people recognize it, but it's happening for these other families. We see stuff where like somebody will show up and then they'll show up the second night with like their mom or their sibling. I've seen it happen where somebody shows up and then they show up with their partner and then they show up with their kids, like that kind of stuff. Like, it's like, this is the kind of thing. It's like, it's all about family conversations. It's all about family connection. I really believe in that power. And that's the reason why I felt the need to share it.
And that powerful, the emotional connection behind that is just really, it really lives with you, and it continues to live with me. Even after I originally saw the movie, coincidentally enough, I was through Independent Lens on PBS over Mother's Day weekend of all weekends. Yeah.
And I'll just add that, the co-production with ITVS, which if your viewers don't know, ITVS funds a limited amount of projects a year, and they're intended for content for public television. And they believed in this project before anyone else back in 2019. And in terms of on a large scale to actually give us the resources needed to complete it and release it. And the fact that it went out on public television in May on an Independent Lens to basically available to every household in the country, I mean, that's like such a huge goal to reach people. But what's crazy is there's so many people that we haven't reached with the film. We didn't have like the Sundance world premiere, and we didn't have, it's been more of like a slow build with our release. It's been a year and a half into the release, and we did a theatrical run and impact campaign and then broadcast, and we're available on the different VOD platforms. And now we're proud to say that we're available on the Criterion channel, which is reaching, a different audience, like it's reaching the art house film going community. And that's really, really cool for us to be included in such an, amazing canon of films on a platform for the people that know and like that kind of cinema, you know, like I mentioned my love of like 60s French New Wave. I mean, if you want to go back and watch like a lot of those films that are available streaming, then that's really, really special thing to have. And we feel honored to be on that platform, as well as honored to air it on PBS and Independent Lens. So, and by the way, we have a 99-cent rental special throughout the holidays on Amazon and Apple TV. So Prime Video. So if you want to watch the movie and you haven't seen it, you can see it for a very low barrier to entry, or get a Criterion subscription, which is only $100 for a year. So
Worth every penny to our listeners. Take them up on that. It is worth it.
Oh yeah, definitely agree with that. There is one final question I have. Now, one thing I put in my notes is that, like, one of the appeals of this story is how reality can sometimes be stranger than fiction. But is there any way you see a version of this story being told in like a narrative style? And and who I want to be careful with how I word this, but like who would you trust to tell the story if not like yourselves?
Oh, I've actually been asked about that by people that were, considering just that. And I really feel like I'd want to be involved. I feel like I still have that same burning thing from Sam that's like, you have to tell it. And I'm sure there's people that could do it justice. I feel like I would put down a pretty good blueprint, but and I'm sure that there will be films that are made that reference this because it is packed. But to do this story, I would want to be involved. And I will say also that as I was over the years developing the movie, I went back and forth between maybe I should just use all this source material as really good notes for a scripted film. I didn't do that because I didn't think it would be as powerful as doing it this way. I really, as I talked about with like the garage rock music, I really believe in raw energy and getting to the heart of like what things are. So I wanted to put that all in. I wanted the rough stuff. I wanted the stuff that was like very much true to what I knew. And yeah, just also say like, man, I believed in the power of independent cinema like since I was like an early teenager, maybe even younger. I watched a lot of foreign films. I watched a lot of indie films. And this is an ode to all of that.
I love that. I guess my last question is could be end on this thought. Despite what's defined by both the noun and verb in the dictionary, everyone, each individually, has their own respective definitions of support. So for both Jason and Reid, how would you each define what a support system is all about? And was there ever a time in your career where you felt as if you were able to deliver your best possible work because such support was what drove you to succeed?
Wow.
Go ahead, Jason.
Great question. Wow. Well, I mean, I feel like on so many levels, well, family, that's obviously a big support system, but like just almost centered around this film, or at least my filmmaking world, like the people that I've collaborated with over the years has just been like such an amazing support system for everything it takes to put into this career and to put into making these projects that take so much from you, and with this film in particular, we had our sort of brain trust family with Reid and Heather and me and Adam and Darren. And Darren and I have worked on everything together since our first feature-length doc, Sonicsgate, about how the Sonics were stolen from Seattle and moved to Oklahoma. You can watch it for free online. But yeah, I mean, like this family that we've built, and with like Reid and Heather. Well, Reid and I, from our friendship, from our whole childhood and everything, that and my relationship with the Harkness family. I mean, that's one thing, but just sort of like what we all sort of went through in the making of this movie, particularly from 2019 to present. And, you know, you finish a movie and then it's another year and a half in our case to take us to the point where we're actually on a streaming network and we're, you know, doing an awards push. But that's a really, really long time after a really, really long time of, you know, making the movie and all those creative decisions. And then there's just like hundreds and hundreds of business decisions or more that happen after you finish the movie, from where you want to premiere to how you want to distribute the movie, and every decision about every bit of marketing around the movie. And you can imagine that with the personal nature of this project, like, and with the personalities of Reid and I and other people on our team, it's just like, oh my God, it's like we're all so so like obsessed with making the absolute like right decisions on every single aspect of this. And that's the cool thing about us being these independent filmmakers, is that we get to, especially with the path that we did with this film, we literally have gotten to make every decision for the movie. And it's different than the filmmakers who just sell their movie or have it paid for by the streamers. It's just, but it's a lot more work. So I would say, you know, like, just, I burned out really heavily this summer on the project and everything we'd done. You know, we got through all the different releases, and I really had to lean heavy on the rest of the team, where I'm used to being the producer, sort of leading the ship. I had to take a back seat, and I think all of us at different points in the process had that. But I really, really had to lean hard, both emotionally and just to like get through to the point where we can be doing what we're doing, which is doing one final round with the film to build awareness and just, you know, just to finish off like what we started and make sure the film's out as widely as possible. So, you know, I mean, I think support network and creative endeavors, as well as in life and in family, is like so critical. And I'm really grateful for the team that we have on this project and how we've supported each other and held each other up when the other people have needed it.
Me too, Jason. I'm really appreciative for that. You know, I brought Jason in mostly out of trust, that, you know, we would be going into some really vulnerable space, and I think that was the right kind of thinking for a project like this. But what was your question originally, Michael?
The question I had, or the question that Tommy had, was like, how would you define support for any creative endeavor?
Yeah. And was there ever a time in your career where you felt you were able to deliver your best possible work because such support was what ended up driving you to succeed?
Ah, man. Okay. So ITV's open call is an interesting story. We submitted twice a year to that for 5 cycles. So like, and we got in every time. We got into their final round every time. Random people. They have like a whole crew of judges who partner up and like pick your project out of the pile. Every time we were getting into the final round, and then every time at the end we weren't getting the funding, so we were just redrafting our 15-minute work sample and our writing and thinking about it, and what is the sort of thrust of the story, and what is the thing that's like really going to get people to think about the movie. Strangely, that little bit of rejection therapy was useful as a motivator, you know, like helped me like really think about the story, think about like what we were delivering, thinking about the themes. And also Jason too, as he started cutting together samples. So when we finally did get the funding from ITVS on our 5th time, I was out in the gorge in Oregon, total scenic area, beautiful. If you've ever been there, you know. And I was shooting something. I was on set. I was shooting something. I was like setting up the camera. We had our subject there. I got the call. I was like, it's Dave Eisenberg. It's like the guy. I have to answer this call right now. I answer the call and he's like, Reid, are you in a good place right now? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you're funded. And I was just like, oh my God. Like
Wow.
I've been through so much, you guys. Like, not just like in all the grant writing we were doing, which was like way too much. It was a ridiculous amount. But and just the getting to this place where it's like ready to really sink into the edit, ready to really do this movie. And I got to say, ITVS and PBS. ITVS is the documentary arm of PBS. They support all of the documentaries that go into the PBS pipeline for documentary through Independent Lens or POV or American Masters. The team was so supportive. Michael Kinomoto was signed on as our supervising producer. He also did the film Mind in the Gap. He was a total angel. He like had a connection to Seattle. He had lived in Seattle as an independent filmmaker. He had worked at Scarecrow Video, like Seattle's cool, still renting movies video store. He knew that old Seattle. And he's Japanese, comes from a Japanese American family and has a lot of touch points with identity in the movie. He brought so much support and connection to the storytelling. His notes were superb. He was really tapped into all the emotional spaces of production, from the story to what we were going through as filmmakers. And I think that, I always believe in publicly funded things. I think that we need way more of that. I wish we were more like Canada in that way. But this is a space still where there's a lot of really good support. If you can get into that system, I think it's so valuable. Right now, we're living in a world where, algorithms are what's making things happen. And I don't like that. I don't think that's truly independent. I think that ITVS is still a place where they foster true independent work.
Yeah, it was amazing to work with them. I'll just add, and just the creative flexibility. And then when COVID hit, the flexibility to extend our schedule and not hit the deadlines and realize and just be so understanding and supportive. And Michael Kinomoto was just so amazing from that perspective, and helping Reid and I navigate the producing for PBS, which we'd both never done, which is complicated. There is a lot more elements to it, but Lois Voss and the Independent Lens, who runs it, was also like an amazing support, and really everybody like we interacted with through ITVS and through Independent Lens, always had the best interests of the film in mind.
Nobody pushed us away from the vision of the project as I saw it, and I think that's something really important for filmmakers to know.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, once again, congratulations on everything you guys have accomplished with this movie, and I'm hoping for the best for award season. I really hope that more people get to check this movie out. Now, as we wind this down, before we get out of here, are either of you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow the movie Sam Now Movie. And then me, it's at Reid Harkness. Jason is at Jason Reid.
Reid's to Reid, actually. But if you go to our Sam Now Instagram, it has both of our handles on there. And if you're still at Twitter X user, I'm Reid206, REID.
Nice. And Tommy, where can everyone find you online?
You can follow me on X, aka the website formerly known as Twitter, at T_Hughes35. You can also follow me on YouTube, Instagram, Letterboxd, Snapchat, Linktree at the TMoney35. Be sure to follow my second Instagram dedicated to cooking. It's been in a bit of dormancy for a moment, but it'll be back, and that's at Cooking with T-Money. Follow movies.mxdwn.com, where you'll be able to see my review of the Disney Plus release of The Shepherd, a short film from director Ian Softly, which has the potential to be a new timeless end-of-the-year classic and a reminder of the communal experience. But be sure to please go see Sam Now. This is one of the best movies of the year. It's powerful, it's emotional, it's a journey, one that highlights how individuals cope with rippling effects in that emotionally intense presentation. With all the talk of an underlining theme of abandonment in the fictitious story that is the holdovers, it is often overlooked about how detrimental the effects of particular events could have on the individual, and differentiations in coping and allowing honesty within oneself. Someone, somewhere out there needed to see Sam's story. I cannot applaud Reid, Jason, and the entire crew enough for sharing Sam's story to the masses. Bravo to the two of you.
Couldn't have said it
Thank you,
better
guys.
myself.
Thank you
guys
so much, both of you. Wonderful. It's been really good talking to you.
Yeah, great
Mm.
talking to you guys too. And you guys can follow me on various social media at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and the platform formerly known as Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Marquee. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.